Hello, welcome to the Week in the Maghreb, where France 24 offers up a closer look at some of the biggest stories from North Africa. Hi, I'm Georja Calvin-Smith. Thanks very much for joining us. Today, this is all that's left of the neighbourhood of Bab al-Azizia, a former stronghold of Libya's late leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Welcome to France 24's Week in the Maghreb special. We're in Libya a year on from Gaddafi's death, the end of the revolution that toppled his 40-year rule. Hello and welcome to The Culture Show. I'm Georja Calvin-Smith. First, back in the spotlight, Burmese artists test the waters as authorities ease up on decades of repression. And I'm joined in the studio by an original Brit rocker. Andy Powell's the frontman of Wishbone Ash, a band whose harmonic wizardries inspired generations of guitarists. But first, we head to Burma, where, after decades of repression, artists are gradually starting to be bolder in openly pushing boundaries. Thanks for joining us here at France 24. Also coming up over the next half hour or so, a sense of solidarity in football. And Denmark's Emily de Forest cleans up with only teardrops. The song, that is. Her barefoot rendition wins her 281 points and victory at the Eurovision Song Contest. Thanks for joining us here at France 24. I'm Georja Calvin-Smith. First, as world powers discuss an international conference aimed at ending the war in Syria, the country's presidents played down the impact that such a meeting could have. And parents in Hong Kong have taken to the streets in protest over what they say is an attempt by Beijing to brainwash school children. Francisco, thanks very much for speaking to us. Now, this has actually been brewing for a while. Lula's never been charged with anything. So what's made prosecutors push for an investigation now?
Yeah, what it's done is that he has not been charged with anything yet.
Chavez had a pretty damning view of the U.S. How come you found yourself at his funeral?
Well, we earned that view. I mean, the U.S. African policy and Latin American policy for too long was very wrong.
And what's your take on the criticism that Chavez actually drove a wedge between the middle classes, although being seen as a hero for those who were on the lower end of the economic scale? He really wasn't necessarily on the side of those in the middle.
Well, I would like to think that if you look back at his track record, there are some things that he did that were unnecessary.
Well, it's actually all been really rather flat, and the rain certainly doesn't help. Just a fraction of the hundreds of thousands of people who turned out to the streets last year have made it this time. Here at Nation, at the end of the route of the Paris rally, I would say probably 100 people have stuck around, if that. Do you think that he's done enough to put paid to those who doubt his ability to stay on as Prime Minister?
Well, I have not called or supported a leadership election. I think that we need to get on with focusing.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Armin Georgian, our international affairs editor.
Hi.
Right, this use of Sharia law isn't going to endear Islamists to locals, is it? What I find interesting is that these guys are going out and carrying out grand terrorist gestures in the hope of changing foreign policy. But what we're seeing is it's domestic policy in terms of encouraging communities to spot fragile individuals like this. It's actually been reinforced by government. Now, this clearly isn't the news that you wanted to hear. Are you ever going to let it go?
Well, as we said already, and since a few months, this law is only a start.
Now, the movement against the legalization of gay marriage has spawned a spike in violent attacks on the gay community. Do you feel guilty about that?
We cannot feel guilty.
What exactly is it that you're defending? Some people might say that if two people want to get a piece of paper to acknowledge their relationship, it's a pretty harmless exercise. So what exactly is it that gives you the right to get involved?
Marriage is about love and is about creating a space to grow up.
Time now for Media Watch, for which we're joined by James Creedon. Hiya, James.
Good evening.
Now, I have just one thing to say to you, and that is, allo quoi?
Do I have to do it as well? Allo quoi? This is the catchphrase that has been annoying everybody in France for the last few weeks.
That riff is pretty much a staple of every air guitarist in the world. Now, obviously, you guys have your hardcore fans who have committed your back catalogue to memory, but it must be quite a feeling to have gotten under the skin of people who perhaps don't even know what their humming comes from. That's quite a legacy. Nick's also a reporter for a number of international papers and magazines. Well, the end of major combat operations, or mission accomplie in French, it tells the stories of some of the Iraqis and US troops you met when you were out there. This week marks the 1-year anniversary since the end of the war in Iraq. Have you had a chance to revisit any of those stories that we glimpsed in the book at all? Found out how things actually played out for some of those characters after the end of the war?
A little bit. I stay in touch with as many people as I can from that time.
When you were actually writing the book, was it for you the intention that you document more a snapshot of those you came across, or were you hoping at all to make some kind of comment on the value of the war itself?
My hope in this and all the reporting I do is that in the accumulation of detail, there are implications for the larger picture.
How would that make you feel if he got what he wants, which is to end his life?
Well, I'd be at a loss, wouldn't I, really, because I've nobody to fight with then.
Do you think he thinks that he's allowed to be forgotten about?
It could possibly be, yeah, thinking he's going to Scotland, they'll forget all about him. But nobody will forget all about him.
Just how do the authorities hope to assert their control over the militia that are still rampant throughout the country?
Libya, like every other country, needs time to regain stability.
Do stay with us. Coming up after this short break, France 24's Olympic team will be bringing us all the latest from the London Games. Stay with us.
Audiovisuel extérieur.